there are many, we have had many people. Rural urban migration happened. Again, it goes back to lack of a physical development plan. People settled in different areas. And as they start to settle in different areas, they start to form up slums. That's how you come the informal sector, informal settlements. Informal settlements are a result of people settling in unplanned, unorganized areas.
Additionally, more hurdles are still holding us back.
The important thing is that institution, because as URSB, we can't enforce. We can't force people to register. But people end up registered because they need the service from the other institutions for them to be served.
What I haven't mentioned is the time it takes from the time you apply to the time you get the permit. And right now, the turnaround time we have is between 4 and 5 months when everything is okay. When I say 4 to 5 months, it could be less, it could be more, okay? And why? Because the amount of resource we have is not commensurate to the demand for our services. Right now, we've got approximately 55 staff in the certification department, okay? The whole of UNBS, we're about 550 staff. And 55 are in certification, the work and the certification review committee that I mentioned, who actually go out, okay? So we receive every month, on average right now, 400 to 500 applications. So, applications every month. So when you apply today, if I was to open the system right now, we are 29th October. We'll probably come to you at the end of December, just before. So you have a 1.5 to 2 months lag between the time you apply and us coming for the audit. Every day is full between now and then. Okay? That's the longest time, just waiting for us to come.
Embracing institution collaboration could be the answer.
One of the elements in which we can handle and deal with the informality in the country, one of the solutions is supporting urban areas and even other jurisdictions to have very clear, well laid out physical development plans, and that these are even enforced. Yeah, and that enforced. Because then they solve so many things. You know where to go, you know what you deal with, you know you're dealing with an area of accommodation, a commercial area, a leisure area. Yeah, you know where each one is what, and then you can definitely.
We actually partner with so many government entities now. Like I don't know, you've heard of the TREP project, where we have URSB, URA, and KCCA or division offices. Where now, when it's time to collect licenses, people need to register before being issued. So that's one partnership already we have. We have partnerships with the Ministry of Gender. We do have with FIA, Financial Intelligence Authority. We do have with Ministry of Finance. Basically, our job, our mandate to register, we can achieve that mandate through partnerships and collaborations with these different entities.
So we have even reduced the cost. You know, the cost is usually another problem. How much are the services that we pay, that we ask for? For SMEs, it is 500,000. For the larger ones, it is 1 million. And we have reduced that greatly by implementing the digital conformity mark, which allows you to do per unit certification. So we have cosmetics producers now who used to pay 500,000 for certification for one product. Now they are paying 30,000 shillings for even 3 products because it's based on the number of products they make. So because they are not making that much, the cost of certification has come down.
Achieving mass business formalization will not be a spirit. It will be a well-intentioned effort that will require institutional level of collaboration, outreaches, and mass awareness campaigns, enforcement, and adherence to physical development plans.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that has given you a lot to think about. In the same train, Let me invite Dr. Emmanuel Erem to please come and take us through a dialogue presentation. Let's welcome him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Peter Odefe. Thank you, ED, EPRC, Mr. Enyimu, thank you so much for your insights. And I beg to ride on the protocol earlier observed by the ED and Mr. Enyimu. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emmanuel Erem, a research fellow at the Economic Policy Research Center, working in the macroeconomics department. I personally want to thank each and every one of you for showing up today. We're discussing an issue of national importance. You've left your workplaces. Some of you have come from very far. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. We don't take it for granted. And please come again next time, like the ED said. So I am here to make a presentation titled Beyond Registration, Does the Regulatory Environment Drive Uganda's Informal Sector? If you listened into the keynote address very carefully and the opening remarks, and in addition to that, watch the video, my presentation is going to be very, very easy for you to understand, okay? So given that background, this presentation will be very easy. It will simply focus on the regulatory gaps around labor, capital, and land, okay? So the language is more or less the same as the language used by the keynote address, the speaker, the ED, and myself in this presentation. Okay. So moving on, okay? We've had informality. Yes, informality is persistent, it's all over the place. But what exactly is this informality, okay? So there are two dimensions of informality. Informality we can look at it from the perspective of businesses, okay, and the workers, okay? When it comes to businesses, we look at it from the legal perspective and the fiscal perspective. So legal informality simply means the business is not registered by the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. It does not have a certificate of incorporation, okay? So that is legal informality. Then when it comes to fiscal informality, it simply means this business does not possess a TIN certificate, okay? And is not complying with its tax obligations, okay? So that is it for the business sector. So you have the legal and the fiscal. Let's get that very clearly from the start, okay? Then when it comes to workers, we have fiscal and the labor informality, okay? So fiscal, again, just like in businesses, that this worker is not registered with URL, okay? No TIN, does not make payee contributions, okay? So that is fiscal. Fiscal simply means tax, okay? Then when it comes to labor, we're looking at the keynote speaker mentioned it very, very well in his speech. We're looking at workers who don't have contracts, don't have social security, don't have insurance, are not entitled to paid, sick, and annual leave, okay? So these are the dimensions of informality when it comes to businesses and workers, okay? So with that background, the rest is going to be very, very easy. Okay? So moving on, of course, Mr. Enyimu is here representing the government, okay? So we are cognizant of the fact that the government has actually implemented several initiatives to bring informality down, okay? So we're look at that, the taxpayer register expansion program. That was actually talked about in the video, okay? So that was implemented in 2013, led by URA, URSB, and local governments, okay? And there are success stories here, okay? The presumptive tax collections from small businesses more than doubled, okay, after the implementation of that program. Then we have others like the e-filing of presumptive tax. Then we also have the e-registration processes that have been implemented by several MDAs, okay? So you have UIA implemented an e-licensing platform, UNBS has one, NEMA has one, URSB has one as well. So this is simply meant to make it easy for the businesses to register. You can register from the comfort of your home or at your workplace. You don't necessarily have to walk to these MDAs. So that cost has been cut for you. Actually, URSB registered a 19% increase in business registrations after it implemented its online registration platform. So the success is there, Mr. Nimu, the successes are there, okay? Then when you look at under NDP3, okay? Under NDP3, I'm talking about a Smart Life Flexi, where the NSSF Act was amended to allow for voluntary savings. So that was meant to bring on board informal workers, okay? Workers who are not making social security contributions under the previous law. So it brought them on board. So even looking at the data on Smart Life Flexi, the numbers have gone up, okay? The members, the voluntary members who are actually registering for social security savings has gone up. It stands at about 44,000 as at October 2025, okay? Then even the contributions, it stands at about 36 billion right now, okay? So what I'm basically saying is, yes, the government has done a lot, okay? The successes are there, but is informality actually going down, okay? Like the keynote speaker said earlier on, it's instead going up, okay? And we have that evidence here, okay? So look, I need your attention here. At the beginning of NDP3, okay, informality stood at 51%, okay? And the objective was to reduce it by 6%, all the way to 45%. But that instead went up to 55%. So we began NDP4 with 55%, okay? Now we want to reduce that now to 46%. That is about 9 percentage points. So under NDP3, the task was to reduce it by 6%. NDP4, 9%. That means the government has a much bigger task ahead of it right now, okay? The task is much bigger, and this calls for a concerted effort. All MDAs must work together to achieve the objective of reducing the size of the informal sector, okay? Then, going on, so we ask ourselves, where exactly is informality? Where does it exist? We have seen that it's at about 54%, but where is it, okay? So we further look at the sectors. Look here. Now, the highlighted colors, these are the ATMS that the previous speakers spoke about, okay? Agriculture, mining, accommodation, which represents tourism, recreation services representing tourism, food processing, representing agro-industrialization. So you see, these are the ATMS sectors that have been prioritized to take us to the tenfold growth strategy objective of increasing the size of our economy from $50 billion as at 2023 to $500 billion by 2040, okay? So these are the sectors, but you see there's high informality in these sectors. Not only in these sectors, in every other sector it is high. Financial services, look at that. Health and social work, 77%, okay? But, so with this high informality, okay, will we actually achieve the tenfold growth strategy objectives, or it still remains a dream, okay? And remember, under the tenfold, we want to double our growth rates, okay? We want to increase it from 6.1% to 10%, okay? So we need to, there's a lot more that needs to be done. Savings have to be doubled from 20% to 40%. But with labor formalization, if we reduce the size of labor informality, okay, that means bringing more workers to make social security savings, then these savings can go up, okay? See that? That 20% can go up by reducing labor informality, okay? If you remember the definition, workers that do not have social security contributions. So if we increase that, if we reduce the size of labor informality, we can achieve this, it's possible. Then we want to increase our exports to GDP, exports as a share of GDP from 12% to 50%. That is a very, very big jump, okay? And the keynote speaker spoke about certification. Even in the video, the UNDS ED spoke about certification. So certification is the only way we can take full advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area, okay? Certification will enable our products cross borders, all the way to Europe, all the way to the Middle East, South America. Certification is key to achieving this target of increasing exports as a share of GDP, okay? Then tax to GDP ratio, very, very important. We want to increase that from 13.7% to 18.7%. And that means, okay, reducing the size of fiscal informality, okay? If we reduce the size of fiscal informality among our workers, that means our workers are making their contribution when it comes to payee, okay? So that will go up. Then if we also reduce the size of business informality, okay? Businesses that are not registered for tax payments, we shall also increase our tax to GDP ratio. So you see the connection, the dimensions, it all adds up if we work together and reduce the size of the informal sector that cuts across all these sectors, especially in the ATMs that have been earmarked. Okay, so now, what does this mean? As I said, we need to work together, okay? We need to look outside the framework that we've been working over the past few years. And how best to do that, okay, than to look at the factors of production, okay? The best way is to look at the factors of production, land, labor, capital, okay? And look at the regulations around these factors of production. Do they actually facilitate informality? Because every business uses capital. Every business uses labor. Every business uses land, okay? So these are the key factors of production. If we can ensure that the regulations around these are well implemented, then we can reduce the size of the informal sector. Then of course, the usual business was reducing the size of the informal sector has been left to URA, URSP. If you look at the initial initiatives I talked about earlier on, TREB, e-filing of presumptive taxes, the one-stop center, okay, EPRC, all that was led by URA and URSB, only those two institutions. If you look at those initiatives carefully, it's only these two institutions. The local government comes and offers some support, but it's not significant. So there's a need for a concerted effort. Okay? Moving on. So my objective is very, very simple. I want to demonstrate to you how the regulatory gaps in land, labor, and capital contribute to persistent informality. Okay? Moving on to regulation of land. As I said earlier on, land is very, very important when it comes to business operations and production processes. Every business operates on land. So the ease with which this land is registered, planned for use, and transferred from one party to another is very, very important when it comes to promoting formalization and increasing productivity. Again, productivity feeds into the tenfold growth strategy objectives. The more productive we are with these factors of production, the more likely we are to achieve our objective, okay? So all this, it's just a battle of semantics, but the end goal is tenfold. Okay? So look at this. The keynote speaker again talked about this. You see the land registration, we stand at about only 30%. Only 30% of our land in this country is registered, okay? But in the land application processes, okay? And also there's also what we call the systematic land adjudication and certification program funded by the World Bank that enabled many businesses acquire titles, okay? That's why we have that jump, okay? That's why we have that jump. So only 30%, that's the take home for you. Only 30% of our land is registered. That's the take home. Then look at this, the number of titles being issued. It's still below target, okay? Still below target. Still below target, although it doubled from 2022, okay? Remember, certain institutions, regulators actually require evidence of a registered business address, okay? Before you are actually issued, for instance, let me give you an example. The Uganda Investment Authority, before it gives you an investment license, you have to show evidence that the land is registered either in the name of the business itself or in the name of one of the shareholders, okay? So it is self-defeating, okay? So that is not possible. With that self-defeating drive, it is not possible for us to drive informality down, okay? Then when it comes to, he talked about capital acquisition, capital. How easy is it for you to get capital, okay? Remember, the land is not registered. Banks require evidence of land registration and land ownership before capital is actually issued to you. And we know that with growth comes formalization. Okay? If you don't have access to sufficient capital, you will not grow, okay? And remember, my land is not titled. How will I get capital? That means I'll never grow. That means I'll never formalize my business. But if my land is titled, I will get huge amount of capital, I will grow. Actually, there are very many forest bureaus in this country that transition to banks, okay, over time, okay? And they only transition because they're able to access capital. And once they transition into banks, they have to formalize. There's no way you can remain informal. Then also, of course, with land titling and the like, it will be easy to enforce physical development plans. Businesses will be easily traceable. Okay, if you have tax collections, I know that such and such a business is on plot this, that, in maybe Namugongo. So it's easy. Traceability is very, very easy. So all that drives into formalization. If we increase this, and again, in connection to what you said that that 70% of rejections of loan applications, okay, are due to land documentation that is not clear, okay? Now, in line with that, only 5% of adults in this country have sufficient evidence of documentation of that they own this land. What about the 95%? I own land, but there's no documentation, okay? So that undermines formalization when it comes to titling. So we need to ensure that these numbers actually go up, okay? So that is the implication for formalization. Then we talk about physical development plans. This was also talked about in the videos. It ensures that we have trade order, okay? If an area has been allocated for recreation, we know that it's for recreation. If an area has been allocated for businesses, we know that it's for businesses. So this ensures enforcement and traceability of these businesses. Because you're in one place and you can easily be located, okay? And now, you look at this. Most of these local governments don't have physical development plans. How will enforcement be done? I have no document to reconcile your location with, okay? So that means everyone will be all over the place, okay? Enforcement will become a problem. Look at this, for example, if you look at this, the town councils, only 45 out of 580 have physical development plans. Look at the districts, 7 out of 146 have physical development plans. This all fosters informality, okay? Then moving on to labor services. He also mentioned it, okay? Labor is a very, very important factor of production. Every business employs labor, okay? And informality in labor is very, very high. That's where inspection comes in. Inspection is very important to ensure that workers' rights are actually adhered to. Workers have contracts, workers are entitled to leave, workers have insurance, okay? So all that drives into informality. And if a worker is not entitled to leave, he will not be productive, okay? He will just keep working, but I won't be productive. If I don't get leave, if I don't have insurance, my productivity will go down, okay? So all that feeds into informality. So when it comes to inspections, okay, look at this. We see that there's insufficient labor inspections, okay? The ILO requirement is that for every inspector, 40,000 workers, okay? One inspector covers 40,000 workers. But in Uganda, we have only 21 labor inspectors, giving a ratio of about 1 to 470 or 80,000 workers. So a labor inspector in this country is doing 12 times the work required by the ILO. And that makes the worker inefficient. The labor inspector will be inefficient in terms of coverage, okay? He's going to be inefficient. He's going to be, the workload is too much, and inspection will not be effective. And that will leave workers prone to exploitation. So, look at this. In agriculture, in the agriculture sector, we have about 4 million workers, okay, in agriculture. The ILO requirement is that these should be 102. Industry, 1.2 million workers. The requirement is that they should be 32. Services, 4 million workers. The requirement is that they should be 121. In total, 10 million workers. The requirement is 255. But we only have 21. You see that? 255 and 21. The gap is 234. That means we have to recruit 234 more inspectors to actually have effective labor inspection. You see that? Moving on. So with that recruitment, that again feeds into the budget. We see that the budget to the Ministry of Gender has been going up over the years. You see that? It's been going up. Then what the apportionment to the labor and employment services, okay, has been stagnating. 11 billion, 13 billion. Okay, then you see this jump here from 13 billion to 127 billion. That is simply because of the GROW project that enabled the inspection of workplaces. Okay, the GROW project enabled that increase. But look at this. The inspection budget is only 2.2 billion. Okay, that is about 0.7% of the ministry's budget. Okay, and it's about 1.7% of the labor and employment services budget. That's all. The workers don't have equipment, they don't have transport facilitation, the numbers are small, okay? All that is because of the small budgets. Then, moving on, you see, because of that small budget, we have inconsistent inspection of workers. It is intermittent, it is all over, it is just goes up, drops. You see that? Then again it goes up. It is just intermittent because of that shortage in labor inspectors. Okay? And what does this mean? As I said earlier on, with limited inspection, there will be no social security contribution. Workers don't have contracts. Workers are not entitled to leave. Okay? This makes them less productive. And also the government, okay? The savings will go down. It will defeat the savings objective of increasing from 20% of GDP to 40%. Okay? Because social security contributions will not be there. Then also, in addition to that, okay, government has been, taking care of these elderly people. The SAGE, I don't know if you've heard of SAGE, okay? That is simply because they did not save when they were younger, okay? So it gives the government a burden in the future, okay? Now, moving on to capital, okay? We know that capital is very, very important, and here we're looking at SACCOs, we're looking at money lenders. These are regulated by the Microfinance Regulation Department in the Ministry of Finance. Okay? And we know that 84% of our small businesses are sole proprietorships, okay? Whose main source of credit are informal lenders. Okay? And these informal lenders never ask for any evidence of formalization. An informal lender will not ask you for a certificate of incorporation, will not ask you for a TIN certificate. And in this way, they are shunning informality. They are facilitating informality. Unlike a bank, a formal bank, you go to walk into a bank, you want a loan of 50 million to start your business, you'll be asked for a TIN. Where is your TIN? Where is your certificate of incorporation? You see that? So the bank has checks, but these informal money lenders do not have checks. All he cares about is, can you pay the interest rate? If the interest rate is 100%, that's also okay. Yeah? If you can pay it, that's fine. Yeah? But one way or the other, he is facilitating informality. Then also the government has been channeling a lot of money through these SACCOs. And our evidence shows that the money that the SACCOs give out are used to start informal businesses. So we can look at these SACCOs as a channel through which to check informality in these businesses. That is just for the policymakers in the room, okay? Now, we went ahead to interrogate the activities of the Tier 4 financial institutions, and we found that it's actually low. Out of a target of 500 here, a target of 500, only 190 licenses were issued, okay? In 23-24, a target of 3,328, only 702 licenses were issued. Actually, in Uganda, okay, according to the data from the Microfinance Regulatory Department, okay, only 151 SACCOs are licensed. But according to the Ministry of Finance, there are 10,000 PDM SACCOs. Ministry of Trade has 33,000 SACCOs. Okay? So there's no centralized information on these SACCOs. How will we fight informality if the numbers are not consistent? Okay? So this just tells you that there's no inspection of these institutions. These institutions have to be inspected. Looking at the budget, look at the budget for inspection. 2.2% for licensing, okay? Like, this is an institution that is supposed to license money lenders, but only 2.2% of its budget goes into licensing, okay? Inspection, only 11% goes into inspection. Inspections are meant to ensure that all money lenders are actually licensed and are treating their customers fair, okay? So only 11% goes into inspection, only 2% goes into licensing. This is still very, very small for a regulator that is supposed to cover the entire country when it comes to Tier 4 microfinance institutions. So we also went ahead and looked at the regulations, okay, the legal and institutional gaps across the factors of production. When it comes to land, we see that there are overlapping land rights. We have the milo land system where the land ownership is separated, okay? Ownership of the land is separate from the ownership of the development of the land. And this facilitates informality. If you look at the informal settlements in this city, most of it is on milo land, land whose ownership is actually contested. No one will ever put up a proper investment on land whose ownership is contested. Then most of our land is actually customary, meaning that it is not registered. Okay, all this defeats the purpose that we had earlier on. With registration, there comes formalization. But if you have 68% of your land under customary, it's not registered, then you will not achieve the target of bringing down informality. Then we also see that there's no institutional coordination when it comes to this. When we went to the field, we found that titles were issued on land that is designated as a wetland. This is a protected area, okay? But a title is issued to it, and on this land, there's a registered business. So that is already evidence that there's no coordination between these institutions. Everyone is working in silos. But if we work together, these institutional coordination issues would not be there. If URSB alerted maybe the Ministry of Lands, okay, that this is a wetland, then maybe these issues would not be there, okay? Then when it comes to labor, we see that there's uncoordinated institutional mandates, okay? At the Ministry of Gender, there are occupational safety and health inspectors. Then also at the districts, there are labor officers. And this contravenes the ILO convention that in as far as possible, labor inspection should be a centralized function, okay? Because it is not centralized, everyone is working in silos. That makes inspection actually ineffective. Okay? The one at the district could be collecting the same information as the one at the Ministry of Gender. Actually, that evidence is there. They're collecting more or less the same information. But if it was centralized, they would be more effective. Monitoring and inspection would be more effective. Then when you look at the labor laws are not dynamic. Nowadays, people are working online. Okay? How are you going to inspect people working online? Labor laws need to be dynamic. Okay? Then conflicting mandates when it comes to capital. Okay? As I said earlier on, we were looking at SACCOs. A SACCO is registered by the Registrar of Cooperatives. Okay? And it's also licensed by either Bank of Uganda or the Microfinance Regulatory Authority, department, depending on its capital levels or deposits. So at any one time, a SACCO is being regulated by two regulators. Okay? And this came out actually as a very cumbersome process for these SACCOs. It makes registration for them very, very difficult because they have to file the same documentation with the registrar and Bank of Uganda. Even when it comes to liquidation, the registrar has a power to liquidate a SACCO. Bank of Uganda has the same power as well. The Microfinance Regulatory Department has the same power as well. So there are these overlapping mandates. Who exactly is supervising these SACCOs? Okay? There's a need for this law to be reconciled. In Kenya, one institution is responsible for the registration and licensing of SACCOs. Maybe we could adopt that. Okay? Because this came out as a very, very big issue for the SACCOs. It makes registration and formalization for them very, very difficult. So I've come to the end now. So we just want to leave you with key discussion questions. Okay? How can Uganda's land, labor, and Tier 4 financial institutions be best organized to support economic-wide formalization? Because we have seen that we have to go beyond URS, we have to go beyond URA. How best can we organize these factors of production? Okay? Then two, how can the regulatory agencies work together under the program-based approach to reduce informality? We know that under the program-based approach, government agencies should work together. They should not work in silos, okay? How can they best work together? Then again, we know that Uganda is one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world, okay? How can the regulatory environment support formalization without discouraging the entrepreneurial spirit of the informal sector players, okay? Because if the informal sector players are over-regulated, they will not be innovative. they will not operate their businesses. Okay? So we need to strike a balance where it's a win-win situation. The government gets the tax it desires, and the small businesses also make the profit that they need. Okay? So with that, I thank you for listening to me.
I know you can do better than that. Dr. Emmanuel Eren, thank you so much. Thank you for all that insight and all that research. And I'm happy to inform you that you have also been captured live on NTV. For those of you who don't know, you're on television right now. So in case you had not put your tie right, you still have an opportunity to do so. No, but going forward, I would like to invite another young person, Ms. Rehema Kahunde. Rehema is going to take us through the next session, which is a panel discussion. So I would like her to come forward and invite the panelists and take us through a discussion of our topic today. Rehema, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rehema Kahunde. I'm a research analyst at the Economic Policy Research Center. Thank you, moderator, for allowing me to take over this session. I'll be taking you through this entire session as a moderator. I will invite the moderators to the stage. Moderator number one is Mr. Issa Sechito. Please take your seat at the front here. Mr. Issa Sechito is a renowned trader in Kampala. Some of you may be knowing him. He's the acting chairman right now of the Kampala City Traders Association, what some of you know as ACITA. The next person I'm going to call to the stage is Mr. Nelson Mutati Nakache. Please give him a warm welcome as he walks to the stage. Mr. Nelson Mutati Nakache is Assistant Commissioner, Microfinance Productivity. Gentlemen, at this juncture, let's give a warm welcome to this panel. That will be ready to share their insights into this event and adding more beef to the presentation that has been earlier made, and then also the keynote speeches from Mr. Enimo and the AD of the Economic Policy Research Center. I will be asking questions. We should set the rules of the game, I guess, just to keep time. We shall have 2 rounds of questions, our dear panelists, and we'll be having about 5 or less minutes to answer each of the questions posed to you. I will start with Mr. Issa Sechito, our renowned trader in Kampala. Trade has been really one of those sectors that has been highlighted to be having a lot of informality, over 90%, as the graph reflected here in our presentation. We want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Yeah, how deep is the issue
Thank you, listeners. It's a very wide question. But when you talk about informality in the business circle, you are talking at a time when I had a very sharp discussion with my co-director in one of the assembling companies that we own, MSK, where we assemble bulbs, sockets, and other items. And his argument was, Mr. Issa, we are wasting a lot of money here. People are on the market, the Chinese are on the market, the Indian are on the market. Most of these have not certified. And in each product, you have a range of about 8 products now at the factory. And at each, if you want to certify one, you will spend more than 3 billion per product. And if there is any failure that you undergo to rectify it, you need to pay another not less than 1 million. So by the time you go through for only one item, whether the bulb, whether the socket, whether the flat iron, you will have spent over 3.5 million on one item. And the argument from the director was, while others are enjoying the market, aren't you holding our hands, Mr. Issa? Because I'm a representative of Gabriel Register, an ISO certifying company, I stood the ground and insisted that one of the best ways we shall market our products is if you have the certification and we have all the Q marks that are needed. While that was the discussion, I am also telling you that I also had a very heated debate with the importers of textile and garments, who are saying now, Mr. Seti, to forget about the country Uganda, forget about begging the president. Now they are even trying to imprison you. Let him put as much taxes as he wants on the textiles and garments. Let them even be charged in kilos, because we have found a way of how we are going to smuggle these items. It is a question of closing our formal companies. We deliver and import it through Kenya in different names, and we pay taxes through there, and we come to sell the goods in Uganda. What a controversy. The Uganda Registration Services Bureau, the URA, have been on a massive campaign in the business community to register companies to become formalized. Here is now a campaign of very high taxes, not anywhere in the region, that is discouraging the registration process. If you are allowing people to run away because you have refused to harmonize the taxes across the region, yet we are regionally playing, then it is you, the government, that is discouraging the informalization, as it were. 3-4 years I made a research of how much tax an informal trader and a non-informal trader pays. And at the deductions, we saw that the informal trader pays more than the formal trader, because, for example, if you are registered, you could claim back at the VAT, which is 18%, together with an exemption of 6% withholding tax, and 18 plus 6 is 24, and an informal trader cannot have any chance of regaining even 1% of that. And therefore, an informal trader thinks he's paying less, yet in actual sense cannot claim any that has been paid, and therefore is a loser. Despite all this, it is very advantageous for business people to register. For example, I was also dealing in the last week with traders who have come to our office and their properties are being taken away by money lenders. And the contracts that we have made, when we analyzed them, it is as if they sold the properties. You borrow money, and on the contractual obligation, because you hurriedly want the money, you say, I, Issa Sechito, I'm borrowing 10 million from so and so, and I informal money lender, and the agreement is I have sold my house at that 10 million shillings. thinking that the business that you are going to operate is going to go through soon, and then you will pay back and regain the properties. Millions of Ugandans have been cheated through the informal money lenders. This and the other examples that I can give shows you how important it is to register a business. But it also gives you a challenge of how government, the business people in Chiku, are casting Kasita for encouraging them to become formalized. Because what the Revenue Authority does, the moment you have a tax identification number, then you are condemned. Other than widening the list of taxpayers, they are widening the taxes that they are forcing you to pay. At the end of the day, you need to go undercover. Those who are not registered carry the day as against those who are registered. So, you really wonder whether there is a deliberate move by the Minister of Finance and the URA and the government in general to encourage us from formalizing our businesses. The practice leads into a different thing. If you cannot harmonize on the taxes, if you cannot harmonize even on the money lending institutions, harmonize on the processes that we need to go through to widen the tax base other than the tax burden, we are deceiving ourselves that we are encouraging Ugandans to register. I saw my brother talking about the PDM and how a potential is there for these people that we have captured at the parishes. If we are ready to harass them the way you are harassing the traders, this ceases to be a potential. Yet it would be, if actually handled well, anybody who is highlighted becomes vulnerable as against one who is not identified. Now that you are even thinking about putting the tiny numbers on our mini numbers, a challenge is going to be double tragedy. Therefore, the business people wish to register because you don't want to borrow when you are not identified. You can't claim for taxes. You can't get exemptions. You cannot get a benefit of anything, incentive of government if you are not registered. But to the contrary, the businesses that begin and fail because of the huge taxes that are heaped on them because of being compliant and being formal is worse than the benefits, any benefits that the business person will get from registering. That is why all accusations and fingers are pointing at the traders and the business community as leading in the informality. It comes from the way URA and the other government agencies treat us. That's why we go under the bed.
Ladies and gentlemen, you carry from the horse's mouth. That is how deep it goes when it comes to informality within the trade sector. Mr. Issa Setito seems to suggest that it's good for you to act or to operate your business formally, because when you are informal, the loss is actually bigger than when you are formal. So you're better off registering your business. But Mr. Issa Setito, let me just find out from you. How many of the traders, do we have enough traders or enough knowledge amongst the traders about regarding the issue of VAT refunds? You mentioned that when you register, you're better off that way because you can actually request for VAT refund, then you have some of that money remitted back to you. You talked about registering or applying for exemptions. How many of our traders do we have, or how much knowledge do we have amongst the traders regarding that issue? Because in the end, those benefits may be there, but then the traders don't know how to go about it.
That's a challenge, both to CACITA and other organizations, but more to government. Because while we praise the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, in even one time camping at CACITA to register our members, it was very good. But this we are carrying two monkeys. One monkey was KCCA, and the other monkey was URA. Now, you want me to formalize my business so that I can benefit in the long run, and you are carrying a person who the next month is asking for income tax. So it becomes so controversial that while you are doing it at the same time and you are saving time and money, you are discouraging many who think that revenue authority is haunting them. Therefore, the number of people that know is limited, but we attribute it to the fact that the tax education workshop that URA heads today are not the ones that befit our members. You bring a person who is controlling billions and you sit them in the same house with a person who is owning 30 billions as capital. You need to do sectoral sensitization workshops in forms of clinics. If you want to go to people who are importing or trading spares, please put them alone so that the questions that they are asking are relevant and they are not having the fear factor. Somebody has 3 accounts and is raising a point of information on IFRIS with a person who knows, who just wants to learn how to claim VAT from Uganda Revenue Authority. So they are not compatible. The person that is having little capital will not even raise their hand, where the sectors who are now manufacturers are rising. So we need to tailor our sensitization workshops for rights and obligations of the members of CASITA in their own sectors. Go to Owino, meet the people of second hand. Go to Chiseka and meet the people in spare parts. Go to Chikuo and call the people of sugar, cooking oil, and all this kind of business, so that the questions that are being answered by the tax facilitators are relevant to the audiences that you attend. But this business of calling us for one-day appreciation week, we are in Uma conference, we are all listening to the wonderful policies. How am I going to rise when the big shots are raising their hands?
Thank you so much, Mr. Sechito. In other words, for the policymakers who are watching us today, for the policymakers who are listening in today, we need to do the right sensitization, not just sensitization, but the right, targeting who, and then do it in form of categories. You know, we don't just pool all the traders together, because some issues are high above up there and then others, you know, are down here. So we need to know who to sensitize and when, and which kind of approach do we need to use. We need to streamline, because he mentioned that some of these things may make it worse. For example, if we're going to attach the team to the name, then the situation is likely to worsen within the trade sector. Thank you so much, Mr. Issa Sechito. I will move on next to Mr. Nelson Tatina Kache. I mentioned earlier that Mr. Nelson is the Assistant Commissioner of Microfinance Regulation Department at the Ministry of Finance. Now, one of the findings we found in our presentation here, we note that when we're visiting businesses, we noted that, of course, there are funds that government is giving out in form of PDM, form of yoga funds, which are going to our traders, to our people down on the grassroots. Now, this money, we are all aware, it goes through circles. And Mr. Mtatina is in charge of registering these circles. Mr. Mtatina would like to know, if we channel this money through PDM and we give it to someone and they start up an informal business, do you think some of our government initiatives are actually perpetuating informality in Uganda?
Thank you, moderator. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, I can.
I want to stand on the protocol that was already mentioned. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to give a clarification on the roles of registration and licensing of circles. In the previous presentation, it was indicated that these circles are falling under multiple regulations or legal frameworks, and it is a big challenge that is affecting their performance here in Uganda. First of all, it was in 1999 that the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Uganda issued a policy stance for purposes of cluster in the financial sector with respect to regulation and supervision. So when you hear Tier 4, that's where it emanates from. Tier 1, those are commercial banks. Tier 2, those are credit institutions. Tier 3 are microfinance deposit-taking institutions. And those first three that I have mentioned are licensed, regulated, and supervised by Bank of Uganda. Now the fourth tier, where the samples fall, those ones were put under Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority. But the clarification I'm giving is that it is not Ministry of Finance that registered circles. All circles are cooperative societies, and they are registered by the Register of Cooperatives. I saw a gentleman from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. So it is the Register of Cooperatives that registers all circles and other registered societies. So for the PDM circles, they are no different from other type of circles in terms of principles, purpose of formation, and the services they give. Whereas that PDM has a broader, approach with activity. So the issue of circle savings and credit is just one component of PDM, which is the financial inclusion pyramid. And I want to put it clear to you that the PDM circles are legal entities because they are registered by the Register of Cooperatives. But for purposes of providing financial services to the people, that is savings, credit, and other financial services, they are supposed to get a license from the Minister of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development. Prior, these circles would get licenses from Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, but because of the rationalization of government agencies and public expenditure, UMRA, which was the regulator, is now translated into a department, the Microfinance Regulation Department, where I come from. So the whole purpose of having them registered, the circles, having them registered and licensed, is to ensure that those savings are safe, there is proper management of the circles, and to minimize the risks. So far, government has done good in terms of enforcing, putting at least a regulatory framework for these entities. And my fellow panelists already mentioned that there is a problem of money lenders. But we also need to appreciate the journey we've moved. We never had these money lenders licensed before. They would get a certificate from the magistrate's court and start their operations. And the magistrate's court by then had no capacity to supervise them. And you cannot regulate what you cannot supervise. So I think the public outcry by then and the confidence in the microfinance sector and the money lending industry was so poor. But today we see most of them, as you saw the graphs, we first of all know where they are, where they are operating from, and we have consumer protection guidelines under the Ministry of Finance. If you have any issue with the money lender, you register a complaint and it is resolved. In most cases they are resolved, but there is need for continuous public awareness. So the PDM circles, as they evolve, already now they are registered by the Register of Cooperatives. They will need, after 2 years of probation, they will get licenses, and the Ministry of Finance will be watching them, supervising how they operate so that those savings are not lost.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Nelson Mutatina. You bring out very important issues regarding circle registration, and indeed we do understand that all the money that is channeled through the circles to go to the PDM beneficiaries, to the ENEOGA beneficiaries, these circles are indeed they're legal entities. At that juncture, I wanted to know what about when the money goes and supports a business that is informal, or when the money goes out and someone uses that very money from the government of Uganda to start up an informal business. Does that perpetuate informality in your own opinion?
This, first of all, depends on how the processes. First of all, how do you get the money from the PDM? There should be a criteria from the PDM circle. These circles have credit policies, they have business plans, they have manuals that guide their operations. So how the money goes out, first of all, there should be proper appraisal by who takes the money and the business that we are going to do, and there should be monitoring. The biggest challenge we have with most of the circles now, they are informal, they are not licensed, but they are not, it does not necessarily mean that they are illegal, because at least they are registered. But with time, there will be a holistic framework where we have all these circles actually under one regulator. The processes have already started. Attorney General has given guidance. Stakeholders are making to ensure that whatever operations are happening in the circle, they can be monitored. Who borrows, who pays back, and what the money is used for.
Thank you so much. In other words, Mr. Mtatina is trying to say that there is more that needs to be done. We have to track and know who is it that's receiving this money. Where is it going? Are we picking money from the taxpayer and channeling it to an informal business who is actually not paying the tax? That's a question that we are yet to answer on the side of government. Yeah, I move quickly to Mr. Rogers Lubega. He is a senior research and quality assurance specialist at what we call UBRA. Ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned what UBRA is, so I will not say it again in case you've forgotten. Mr. Lubega, our research shows that there are so many employers out there who are not releasing social security for their employees. And when you look at the targets that were presented by Mr. Emmanuel Erem, we want to increase our savings from 20%, double to 40%. And we have so many employers out there who are not saving for their employees. And here you are, you're regulating NSSF, you're regulating the likes of Mazima saving schemes. What do we need to do to have more workers on board, to have more employers sensitized or submitting their social security for their employees?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be answering your question straight away, but I just want to throw some numbers that people need to hear here. We are talking about formal employment for starters. We are focusing on the formal sector. Let me just throw in this and tell you, when it comes to the formal employment, we are looking at only less than 4 million people saving. And when I talk about saving, we are looking at long-term saving, retirement savings. If I ask the question, who is ready to retire here? I don't want you to answer that question, but are you ready to retire? Have you saved enough? I'll leave it at that. Of course, we have studies that we've also carried out together with EPRC and FSD, and it's very clear that Ugandans are not saving enough. That's one thing. And when you focus on the informal sector, we had one 3 years ago, which was a feasibility study on the National Long-Term Savings Scheme. Whereas different schemes have come up with products that target the informal sector. We talked about NSSF, with the Smart Life, savings and all that. Asita, we had one 2 years ago, which didn't perform well. Those were some of the studies we are trying to, the pilots, to see that we loop in the informal sector. Over 80% of the informal sector workers are not saving, and they are not willing to save if they are not told. These are some of the recommendations we got from that study. Today, as we speak, of course, I'm representing the accounting officer and the entire team. They are at Serena. We have a workshop on the National Long-Term Savings Scheme, which is as a result of that study that we have. And it's going to loop in everyone. We are focusing on that 80% of the informal sector, people who are not saving. And guess what? Is it that they don't have enough? They earn. They earn. But why aren't they saving? But your question looked at employers not saving. For me, I'm bringing in the informal sector. The employers are not saving. Yes, we do inspections as a regulator. We do carry out inspections. We have schemes reporting to us. We have over 65 schemes that we are regulating. But like I told you, it is only 4 million people. The doctor presented and talked about the 15 million, but the labor, the workforce, from the removals, we know that those who have the potential, who are supposed to be saving, should be 25 million. But where are they? Where are they? They are all in the informal sector. Whereas we struggle with the formal sector, it also has a design issue in it. Of course, there are so many issues that are coming up, and we have reforms that we are fronting to ensure that people save. You've heard of the public pension scheme that is coming up, the Act is already in place, and we try to ensure there is adequacy and sustainability. There is money for the people who are retiring, and they are contributing, and government is contributing. It's going to be contributory. So, to have these people save in the formal sector, we are intensifying on the inspections. Doctor mentioned that, of course, this is about the inspections for the employment, something. But for us as regulators, we carry out these inspections. We have on-site and off-site to ensure that the governance aspects are addressed, because those are some of the issues that people present in the informal sector. They think that their money is not secure. So if you have the governance issues addressed, then you can have these people on board. But again, I will mention 2 or 3 things to give comfort to the people around that there's something that is being done. With the workshop that is going on right now, and the launch of the National Long-Term Savings Scheme, NLTSS, which is coming up, we are looking at partnerships, collaborations, and this is something that has come through from my boss from Ministry of Finance, the Keynote address that came through, the presentation, the documentary, and probably what EPRC is pushing, collaboration. We need to work together to ensure that we have everyone on board. People have to save for their retirement. We need to deal with the old age poverty. So, with the informal sector and the NLTSS I've talked about, we are looking at a few things. One, we are looking at the government incentive. This is going to run for a short time, and then it's like helping someone to walk, and then later you let them move. So that is the pilot that we are doing, starting. These are things that have worked in other countries. I mean, if you go to Uganda, it has a scheme, that's how it started. But of course, that works with information. If you have information documented properly, you know that border has earned this much, the artisans earn this much, the market vendors and the rest, because those are the people in the informal sector. They earn this much, and you see how you can help them. That's number one. Number 2, we are trying to make it easy, and it has also come through, I think they talked about it. We have to ride on the technology that has come up, making it easy for people to register and save. If you look at the smart life, that's what it's doing. We need to cure that operational obstacle that has been there. 3, we are also looking at when people save, and this we piloted it with Mazima scheme. If they are saving for a long time, have a portion that is available to them, because people don't. Some people will agree with me. Your people, when they save, they want to access their money the following day. So we are like, how can we deal with this? That's why the Smart Life gives you options on how to save. Maybe you save for 12 months, target saving and that kind of thing. So we try to cover those gaps and ensure that if you save maybe 100%, 50 is long term, 30% is available to you, 20% maybe is for insurance coverage. That kind of make it enticing for people to save, and that will help us to look in the informal sector. And the few studies we've undertaken have personally participated in them, and people are positive about it, and I believe they will be positive. But on the public sector, to answer the question on how to get these people on board, I can tell you their efforts there. And as of June last year, we had 2.9 people, members serving. Today, we are talking about 4 million. It's a huge gap, about 39.1%. That's an increase in that membership. When you talk about the coverage, which was about 15.7, we're talking about 16.1. It's going up. Contribution to GDP, which was about 12, we are going to 14. And as we move with the 10-point strategy, we could reach 2040 like the way it was in the presentation. So there are efforts there, and the regulator, maybe I should also note this, the regulator is not supposed to start schemes, and we are not starting schemes. We are doing this under the regulatory sandbox to test this product. Once it kicks off, there will definitely be trustees to run this, administrators, custodians, with all that set up, the governance issue to be secure for someone who is serving in the public sector to know that their money is safe and they will be able to save.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rebecca. It looks like Ubra is really busy cooking so many things that we're going to see, to have so many informal players. However, the question which you will answer later, because I need to move on to the next panelist, is you mentioned that we have about 80% of workers, either of people, either not saving or not even willing to save. So the question here is, are they just not willing, or they don't have what to save? Because we understand a typical informal sector worker actually lives hand to mouth. We have so many people in Uganda, whatever they make for that day is what they're eating. So is the issue about not willing to save, or actually not having what to save?
Can I answer that quickly?
In 1 minute?
Maybe something that you need to add to that is that income of theirs is not consistent. That's the other bit. That it comes in today, tomorrow they're not sure whether it will come through. Then tomorrow, the other day, they have more coming through. So the issue is, yes, over 80% of such people in that category are not saving. Are they earning? They earn something. And from what we see from the circles, the cooperatives, the village savings things, and all those organizations that people have in the informal sector, they raise some money, they get some money. We need to create awareness, we need to incentivize them, we need to give the assurance that their money is safe, and we also need to give them that bigger picture that at some point you won't be working, but you need to earn something.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lubega seems to suggest that whether you're earning 1,000 shillings, save the 200. Whether you're earning 5,000, save the 1,000. Yeah, please take note. I will move on to the next panelist who hasn't yet spoken. Maybe a panelist, in case you're not speaking, can you turn off your mic so that we reduce on the echoes? Kindly. Thank you so much. Next we have Mr. Enoch Mutambi from the Ministry of Gender. We've had issues of labor inspection coming through during the presentation by Mr. Erem. Mr. Mutambi, I wanted to know what regulatory barriers really weaken the labor inspection function of the Ministry of Gender. We know that there are so many workers out there who do not have contracts. There are so many workers out there or employees who are working under very unsafe conditions. So many of them, like I mentioned earlier, their employers are not saving for them, they're not meeting their social security. But we need someone to come to these workplaces and ensure and tell this employer, hey, we want to have all your workers with contracts. We want to have all your workers working in a safe environment. But that function seems to be lacking from the presentation that was made. So what could be the regulatory issues on your side?
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe let me start from the point of disagreement. To say that that function is lacking is not true. The function of labor inspection is not lacking in the ministry. What perhaps might be a challenge is the scale of labor inspection. When I came in, I found that Simon was talking about the number of inspectors, 21 out of 10 for 10.2 million workers. And the 21 by inspector government level. And it's true that labor inspection should be centralized, but because of circumstances, we have gone beyond centralization, and every district in Uganda, municipality and city has a labor officer who but at the same time, when you come to the national level, the challenge is the main barrier. That is one. But two, also related to this, are issues related to funding. We talked of about 255 labor inspectors who would be required at the national level, and we have only 21. What could be the challenge? You see, institutions have mandate. The districts which had labor officers were very, very few. But government has consistently been increasing the number of labor officers within the districts, and it has scaled up the level of inspection. But overall, there is still a gap as far as labor inspection is concerned. Government is trying as much as possible to fill this gap, but these institutional barriers do exist. But also there were issues that were mentioned earlier about the institutional coordination. And I think somebody mentioned about the institutional mandates. Institutional mandates are okay, it is concerned for the contracts, and then you are able to go for what they are looking for as far as taxes are concerned. However, the gap that I see which is missing is the institutional coordination. Can we work together and increase the scale? Because if we did joint inspections, it would increase the scale as far as inspection is concerned.
Thank you so much. That is very, very insightful. Yes, he acknowledges the fact that the inspection function is working. However, there are some issues. Ladies and gentlemen, before I carry on with my panel, I would like to recognize the presence of Honorable Beatrice Akelo, who has just joined us from the Office of the President. You're most welcome. Yeah, so over to you. I think I should go for the second round of questions, which should be very brief and fast because we're running out of time. I'll go back to you, Mr. Issa Sechito. We've had instances where you see a trader, you are a registered business seated somewhere, and then some other business just erupts just next to you, either in your veranda or just in the neighborhood. Some informal, businesses just erupt anyhow and anywhere in Kampala and even other cities. So in this aspect, I'm asking, what do you think we need to do to organize the city? What would you recommend as someone who is downtown, to have everyone doing business where they're actually supposed to be doing it, and not on the street, and not on someone else's veranda, or on someone's roof,
We need, first of all, to have political sovereignty, so that if you give powers, the KCCA, you mandate them to do their role. I have written personally, since I ascended to the Kasita office as chairman in June, I have drafted 6 letters to the executive director of KCC. With the street vendors. Extensively, they subscribe or pay income tax or presumptive tax, whichever applies. They back to ask who is not a president's person. Are the shopkeepers not president's people? Are the market dwellers not president's people? So if we remove politicking from the business operations, this is a day operation. If the government is decided to do the right thing, I don't need even one police officer to remove these boys. I just need the backing of a big politician to do it alone. Therefore, all the mess you see around town, you will be surprised. I also want to mention this. My brother from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, we have worked with them on charging of taxes in kilos on garments and textiles, contrary to other East African member states and the world over. And in the corridors, some people will tell you this is a presidency tax. So the only monster that is killing the trade order in the city is politics. If we can get to arrest this monster called the politics at whichever level, people will come. Forget about the president. Go to the MPs, aspiring MPs, go to the Lord Mayor. If you hear the spirited fight, this man of rule of law, the spirited fight will put on the illegal people on the streets. You will forget that he's a singer of rule of law anthem. Therefore, it is very easy to manage Kampala if the authorities that are delegated to do the work are doing it without infiltration of the cheap politicking that is happening on the streets. So the trade order that we all need, the buyers, look at the, go to Barton Street, look at the taxis. A very small space is lot for the pedestrians and is filled by the border riders. The taxis who would be inside the parks are rotating and turning in whatever formation across the divide. And you only need 2 traffic officers to get to control that. If you did that, they will say, you people, these are our people. For as long as we sing the song of our people, we cannot achieve the trade order that we want in the city. I am soon meeting with the president to ask him when we can become his people, as people operating the shops and the markets, so that we can also take what is due to us, especially if I pay the license, if I pay the market due, if I pay all the taxes in my small shop, I need to be facilitated, because that's what the law requires. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sechito. You raised very important political economy aspects. And the good thing, we have a representative from the Office of the President, and I think she will iron out some of these issues that Mr. Sechito is raising. So I will go quickly to the next panelists, but briefly, each one of you is going to tell us how each of your institutions can work together with EPRC, with EPRA,